So we'll go ahead and get started. So I know that I mentioned, like, when I posted about this call about consistency, and I know that we've talked about that before, but I've been learning a lot about. So I've been reminded about the compound effect and its relationship to consistency. And also another book that I read, and I think we've talked about it before too, it's called The Slight Edge. And that is, so Compound Effect is by Darren Hardy. And then The Slight Edge is by Jeff Olson. And those are, they are very, very closely related. They kind of go hand in hand. And so I've been thinking about that a lot, and I've been thinking about that consistency element a lot. But the cool thing was that when I got to listen to, John Maxwell, that call that he did for Beachbody, he talks, so his new book that I kind of touched on last week, his new book is about our capacity. And he talked about like your awareness of yourself. Mainly, that was mainly like the big talk that he touched on. He, like, in his book, I think he has like a couple of, like, points that he covers, but his main point of the talk that he gave this last time for Beachbody was specifically about your awareness and your awareness of, how you think and how you act and your habits and all of those things. So, and one of the things that he really did specifically touch on was habits. And I just got to thinking about, like, how closely our habits, and because that's something we do every day, right? Or sometimes it's without thinking. A lot of times it's without thinking, but just something that we do every day, and how related that is, obviously, to our consistency and therefore to our success. So I was just, I don't know, it's just been kind of like all fluttering around up in there. And I was really excited about I wanted to share with y'all a little bit more about what I learned from the John Maxwell talk too. But I was really excited because it ties in so well, and it's something that I'm learning a lot about right now that I wanted to pass that on to y'all. So I was doing some digging, and I know that we had talked about consistency a lot before. So I was like, I kind of don't want to go there specifically so much, because we all know, like, I ought to, I need to be consistent and all those things. But I really like the way that specifically the compound effect and its relationship to what I've been learning through this John Maxwell talk about our capacity, and how those two things are kind of related. So that's where I'm going right now. So I was looking up some stuff about Darren Hardy and some things that he's saying, and I found some really cool, assessments and tools and stuff that go along with his book, The Compound Effect. And so one of the things that he says, one of the quotes that I really liked of his, it says, the rhythm of daily action aligned with your goals creates the momentum that separates dreamers from superachievers. So I really liked that quote because it reminded me of another quote that I see on Pinterest all the time. When you see a dream without a plan is just a wish. And it's very easy to stop there. Be like, okay, I need to have a goal. I need to have a plan. I need to have these things that I want to do, and I need to know how to get there. But then how many of us actually, like, make a plan and, go from that, I should be consistent, I need to be consistent, I ought to be consistent, into number one, why should I be consistent? And number two, how do I do that? And I have, because I'm such a fan lately about keeping things simple, I am also a fan of how, like, practicality, and, like, let's break it down and let's make some steps, not a lot of steps, but just enough to where I can have some forward motion. And so we'll get into that later. So, and I just really like the way that this makes, I really like the way that it feels to come up with an idea and make like 1 or 2 bullet point, plan kind of thing, and then go for it. Because big dreams are great, and big dreams are things that we need to have because it propels us forward, right? But it's overwhelming to have a big dream because it's out there and you're like, what do I do with it? How do I get there? I don't even know. So, and it's very easy to get distracted, and it's easy to get overwhelmed. And so we just need to start small. And that's the same with our business, with Beachbody business and all of those things. So, starting small is all what the compound effect, that book, and the whole concept of a compound effect. That's what it's all about, is those little everyday decisions that add up over time. And if it's a positive decision, you're going to see like a consistency thing. Like if you're consistent in a positive direction, you're going to see over time, it might not show up a lot, but then over time it's going to start showing up positively, as opposed to like that. Because if you're not, like, you're consistently negative, then it's going to show up as well. And that's also what the Slight Edge is about, because you're, like things that you do every single day, those teeny tiny little things that you think that they're insignificant because you're not seeing a result from it directly. Because I think we're trained to respond to things that we do, the results that we get from the things that we do. And that tells us, we let that a lot of times dictate whether or not that action or that thing that we did was worth it, or whether we're going to do it again. If something good happens, then yeah, we're going to do it again. If something bad happens, probably not going to do it again. And then if nothing happens, then you're kind of like, I don't want to waste my time. I'm probably not going to do that again. So we have two negatives working for us or working against us. And so, like, how do we get it into our brains that just because we don't see something happening doesn't mean that it's not working? And that is what this business is all about, because there's so much of what I do now that I'm starting to see now that I had basically had people tell me, you just have to promise yourself to just keep doing it, because it's not going to look like it's doing anything right now, but it will later on. So why do we be consistent? Why is that a necessity? Why is that one of the things that everybody talks about so much? And why do people say that that's like one of the biggies, is your consistency in your business, your consistency in your fitness, your consistency in your meal planning, all of those things, consistency across the board. So that's why, because we know that even if it doesn't look like it's working, it is working in a negative or a positive way. And you just kind of have to make sure that what you're doing is going to be, is the habits that you're doing are going to propel you forward and in a positive direction, as opposed to backwards or in a negative direction. So how do we be consistent? Like what are practical steps, and what are practical things that we can do? And one of the things that I posted about this past week, did I post about it yesterday? Yes, I think it was. I lose track of the days. Is that, and it's one of the things that John Maxwell said, and he said that you can't go uphill with downhill habits. So you can't make uphill progress if your habits are taking you downhill. And how does that react? How does that relate to how do we be consistent? And that's relating to your habits. So we can't go uphill with downhill habits. So we need to focus on our habits right now. And that's one of the hows about being consistent. So we are what we repeatedly do. This is another Darren Hardy quote. We are what we repeatedly do. No, that's not Darren Hardy. Maybe he said it at one point, but that's not. I'm trying to think, and I purposely didn't write who wrote it, who said it, because I can't remember who it was. So this is another thing that I keep coming across. And so it's one of those things, like if I keep seeing it and it's in front of my face a lot, that means I need to listen to it. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, therefore, is not an act, but a habit. So our habits back again, have a lot to say about our consistency and how consistent we are and how to be consistent. And I like that it says excellence, because it doesn't say being perfect, and it doesn't say getting it right every time. And it doesn't even say what kind of excellence. It's excellence, which is doing your best and being the best that you can at a given situation. But also it depends on you, like your success. And we talk about that all the time. And I hope that's something that y'all really do take away from our team as a whole, is that we give each other tools and we spur each other on to be successful in the way that is meaningful to an individual success. Not mine. You know, I have my definition of success for me, but that's different from yours, Liz. So another concept, another aspect of how we are consistent, not only with our habits, but also with our awareness. And this is another aspect of what John Maxwell was talking about, because you can't fix something, and you can't fix a habit. You can't go in or fix a broken pipe unless you know what's wrong, exactly what's wrong. And you can't fix a flaw, work on a flaw in yourself until you identify your weaknesses or those problem areas in your life. And so I found a really cool, so when I was looking for some more information about the compound effect with Darren Hardy, I went to his website, and he has, like, you can sign up and get different tools and things like email to you, and it's just a bunch of links of things that go along with his book. And one of them is this life assessment, which I was like, okay, that's hokey, like when I first saw it. But I kind of eat these things up. I kind of like taking these little like assessments and circle on a scale of 1 to 5, that kind of thing. But this one was cool because you sit and you're honest with yourself, and you answer the questions, and they're in categories. And there's only 3 pages of questions here, and then the last page is like, it's this wheel, and each one of the categories is a spoke. And then, so I don't believe that things can ever be completely balanced. So when we talk about balance in our lives, it's a relative term, and I think that it has a lot to do with the season of life you're in and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of a different topic, but it kind of lets you know where you're quote unquote off balance. And so you're like, well, what does that have to do with my habits and my goals and stuff? Well, this is just like, you need to know where you are before you can figure out where you're going. And so that was an interesting little tool that I found that I just filled out. I'm also kind of bad at them because I tend to answer them the way that I want that to be, and not necessarily the way that it really is. Yes, I want to always be consistent with my time with my family and that kind of stuff. So all of that to say, that's a great little assessment because it directly speaks to your awareness of yourself. And then that can focus even more into my habits. It can maybe tell you, like, if you say, like, one of my spokes, like, I'm pretty good in my physical aspects, but like, hey, my business side is like almost clear into the inside of my wheel. And so like, whenever my wheel's rolling down I'm always going to be like doing this because one of my spokes is shorter than the other ones, that kind of thing. So it speaks to your awareness, which speaks to your habits, which speaks to your consistency and your success. So I wanted to give y'all that little tidbit. I actually put the link for this PDF in the post where I put the link to this call. So that's there. I also put the Amazon link to the Slight Edge book. Not so much the Compound Effect because I like to give that as a gift. Hint, hint, emeralds. And so I really like that. So I didn't want to be like, hey, go buy this book because, I want to buy you the book. It's great. Anyway, so bottom line, I like action points. And the good news about consistency and the good news about this compound effect concept is that it's based on action. It's kind of a good news, bad news kind of thing. And I don't know if you've thought about it that way before, Liz, but one thing that I kind of came across when I started coaching was like people were always saying, there's nothing special about me. I'm not doing anything, like there's nothing magic about me that is making me successful. It's the action points and it's doing it. And like, if you do it, it's going to work for you too, just like it's worked for me. And there was a part of me that really loved that. And there's a part of me that actually didn't believe it at all. But the longer that I've done it, it really does prove itself to be true, because there's absolutely nothing special about my salesmanship, like heck, we talk about that all the time, that's like icky and no way. So there's nothing special about the way that I talk or the way that I do that, like I just use the tools and I was consistent with it. And that's what I attribute a lot of my, if you want to call it, success in this business to. Not that I've gotten there, because I still have a long way to go, but just doing it, like doing the thing that you're afraid of, doing the thing that you're struggling with. Because if you wait for the motivation, and I can attest to this 100%, if you wait for the motivation or you wait for someone to do it for you, then it's never going to happen. It really isn't. And that's the good news, bad news, because the good news is that it's dependent on you, and the bad news is it's dependent on you. Like it's, there's nothing special about any one person, and that's good because we're all on a level playing field, but you're going to have to do it. And you're going to have to, like, I'm going to have to sit down every day and do this, or it's not going to happen. And that's the good news and the bad news. If you do it only when you feel like it, you're never going to feel like it. and sometimes it's just what you should do. Like just that thing that's the hardest and the thing that you're the most scared of. It's like when you don't feel like working out. A lot of times, if you just don't feel like, oh, I'm just kind of, I don't feel like working out. Like a lot of times that's the best time to do it, right? So if you're, like a lot of times, if I'm not feeling like working my business today, reaching out to people, knowing that I'm making a difference in somebody's life, sending those invites that may change someone's life the way that Kristen's invite changed mine. Like that is motivation for me. And that a lot of times, if I don't feel like working, I'll sit down and I'll start working. And then all of a sudden it's like the 5-second rule that we talk about. 5-second rule. That's whenever you drop something on the ground. 5-minute rule. You set an alarm. I guarantee you in 5 minutes, you're going to be in it and you're going to be ready to do it. So kind of along, you may have heard Kristen share the analogy about the water pump. Like you're going to have to sit there and pump it. And the cool thing is, okay, so I took my girls to, there's botanical gardens out towards the city. And we went there today, and it was beautiful, a beautiful day, wonderful. But they have a water pump that the kids can like pump and show them how they used to pump water out of the ground. And I was like, Megan, go over there and do it. And she's pumping and pumping and nothing's happening. And it's not hard. Like, it's not like she's like putting a lot, no, it's a pretty easy, like it was oiled. It's going good. And it's just, we're pumping and we're pumping and we're pumping and nothing's happening. And she's like, come on, really? Like she looked at me like, is this a trick? And I was like, no, just keep going. And so she does it. And eventually I took pictures, and it was the coolest thing because I was like, this is what we've been talking about. There was water dripping out, and she pumped a little bit more and the stream got bigger. And if she were to sit there and pump, and if it was the right kind of water pump and not just like a, foo-foo kind of thing, that water would be gushing out and there would be absolutely nothing that we could have done to stop it. So I love that analogy. I love that I got to see a picture of that. Like, it's not hard. It's not hard to do that every day. In fact, in the Slide Edge, they talk about this. They talk about the things that we do consistently that result in positive, like upward motion and positive, like success for us. It's just as easy to not do it as it is to do it. Because honestly, like, they're not hard things. Like, to sit down at your computer and type out a message to somebody, it's not hard. Like, we make it a lot harder than honestly, like, I make it a lot harder. I sit there and get in my head, and I try to find out the exact same words and the right words. And I forget that I can't say the wrong thing to the right person. I forget that so many times. And I wish that I could have backward, tattooed across my forehead backwards so that I could see that in the mirror. But I get in my head and I make it hard, but it's not. It's easy to pump. But the hard part is waiting for something to happen. And if you just keep doing it, it will. So I hope that speaks a little bit. Like I said, it was good to kind of get that all straightened out in my head. And people talk about success a lot, but I don't think they talk about consistency a lot. And I don't believe you can have one without the other. So you can unmute yourself, Liz. Do you have any questions or anything you wanted to talk about? We have a few minutes before the Dream Big call is starting. You're fine.
Sorry, Brady just got home.
No, you're good.
She can go.
Yes, go see Daddy.
I know. No questions. That was good. Yeah, that was good. Because really lately, the consistency thing has, I know I should have my hour, and then I sit down and, I'm like, well, I'll just look at this, or I'll do this. And, so I get distracted with things. But, it's only an hour. And like you said, I think I put more pressure on sending out messages than it really is.
Yeah. And I think I get, I think that if I'm not doing something big, that I'm not doing enough.
Yeah. Yep.
So really that concept, this really, I love, this does a lot for me to think about the fact that it's the little things that I do every day that really are going to add up. It's not the big things that I do, because I get overwhelmed with the big things.
Mm-hmm.
I can get in, getting in my head and I get overwhelmed with a great big, invite.
Yeah.
Whereas just as much of my consistency comes from, just sending a little message hey, how you doing? I was thinking about you. Are you doing okay? Because nobody asks that person that. That is just as big, if not more, of my consistency, because it plants the seeds that later on, in a very non-manipulative kind of way, but you know what I mean? I get it. I get this big, scary invite is looming over me. And I think that that's what I need to focus on. Even though inviting is a huge thing, but I think if I could just wrap my brain around those little relationships, that builds up to be it's almost you work that muscle of that consistency. That consistency will bleed over into this consistency. And and it really does have a lot to do with it has a lot to do with what coaching has taught me. And really just that self-discipline of sitting down and doing something, and how that has bled. Sitting down and doing something and getting something done, and not just checking the box, but you know what I mean. So.
No, I think that was good.
Thanks. Thank you. I like to pass on, I hope that, I like to pass on what I'm learning, because I know that I'm not the only one that deals with it. Yeah. And if I'm thinking it, and if I'm struggling with it, or if I'm needing to hear a reminder of it, then I guarantee you that someone else is. So I'm glad to be able to pass that on.
Yeah.
So.
Appreciated.
Sure. Thanks, girl. Thanks for showing up.
Yeah, I think I'm going to either call in or probably listen in later dinner time for the Dream Big call.
Good call. Yeah. All righty.
Have a wonderful evening.
You too, dear.
Bye.
Bye.